Day. It's been packed for players like Alex Eala, Joao Fonseca, seeing the Filipino fans, the Brazilian fans. Have you ever seen anything like that in terms of...
No, but that's fantastic to see, right? It's all about the growth and the evolving in the tennis world. You know, it's such a global sport. All the Philippine fans from coming...
Stop. Before you scroll, this broke during the Indian Wells second week, and the tennis world is still processing it. Stadium 1 at Indian Wells just witnessed something the BNP Paribas Open has never seen before. A 16,000-seat arena shaking for a 20-year-old Filipina who isn't even in the quarterfinals anymore. Alex Eala's round of 16 exit to Linda Noskova barely dented the noise, because the real explosion happened off the court. Tournament director Tommy Haas went on Tennis Channel and essentially confirmed what Filipino fans already knew: this woman is box office. Record crowds, every single day. Numbers that forced even a former world number 2 to deliver a reaction so pointed it read less like routine praise and more like a public indictment of his own tour's decision-making. Yet somehow, before Indian Wells, the WTA's scheduling machinery kept burying her on secondary courts, at impossible hours, in venues where her fan base was driving more foot traffic than the scheduling ever gave her credit for, while driving ticket sales to levels that left tournament directors publicly scrambling for explanations. That contradiction, that's exactly when Tommy Haas erupts after WTA deliberately snub Alex Eala's explosive ticket sales. And the tennis world finally had to confront an uncomfortable truth. Hit subscribe for the fastest, sharpest tennis breakdowns on YouTube, because what's unfolding around Eala isn't just a hot streak, it's a full institutional reckoning, and we're only getting started. Here's what actually went down in the California desert last week, and why it matters far beyond a fourth-round exit. Alex Eala arrived at the BNP Paribas Open, ranked 32nd in the world, arriving as the first Filipino player ever seeded at a WTA 1000 event, and carrying the commercial weight of an entire fan base's expectation on her shoulders. Her opening match against Diana Yastremska wasn't pretty. A grinding, energy-sapping three-setter that went 7-5. 4-6, 7-5. But the crowd inside Stadium 1 didn't care about the scoreline aesthetics. They were there for her, and the noise inside that arena reflected it. Then came the walkover against Coco Gauff in the round of 32, when the two-time Grand Slam champion retired through injury. Even that anticlimax couldn't quiet the atmosphere. Filipino fans who had traveled thousands of miles, booked hotels weeks in advance, and wore Philippine flags draped across their shoulders inside a California desert stadium weren't leaving early. The energy around Eala's presence at Indian Wells had already taken on a life entirely separate from her match results. What ended Eala's run was a clinical dismantling by Czech world number 14 Linda Noskova, 6-2, 6-0 in under an hour, using 7 aces and 25 winners to expose every vulnerability in Eala's game on the slowest hard-court surface on the entire WTA calendar. Indian Wells carries a court speed rating of just 0.73, the lowest of any hard-court event on tour, and it consistently neutralizes aggressive ball strikers who thrive on pace. Eala is exactly that kind of player. Her best results have come on faster surfaces like Miami and Dubai, where her flat, penetrating ground strokes generate free points. In California, Noskova neutralized that weapon so completely that Eala's usually aggressive baseline game never found purchase. Neither Noskova's dominance nor Eala's defeat was the defining story to emerge from Indian Wells 2026. It was what Tommy Haas said on Tennis Channel after she left the tournament, and the unmistakable institutional frustration hiding beneath his words. Tommy Haas is not a man who deals in hyperbole. A former world number 2, a Sydney 2000 Olympic silver medalist, and the tournament director of one of the most prestigious events in tennis, he chooses his words carefully. So when Tennis Channel host Steve Weissman asked him about the record attendance figures over the Indian Wells weekend, Haas didn't deflect or offer a diplomatic non-answer. Without deflection or diplomatic hedging, he confirmed the attendance figures were unprecedented for an emerging player. Stadium 1, a 16,000-seat colossus that has hosted Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Serena Williams, and Novak Djokovic at their absolute peaks, was packed to its rafters specifically because of a 20-year-old from the Philippines and a 19-year-old from Brazil. His exact framing was telling: record crowds. So many fans here over the weekend. Every single day. For a tournament director whose entire professional mandate is to maximize commercial success and fan engagement, that statement wasn't just praise, it was an acknowledgement of a commercial force the tour had been slow to fully recognize. His comments about Eala were equally pointed beneath the surface politeness. Having all the Philippine fans coming to support her, it's fantastic. You see the next generation hyping up the tennis world, and that's what it's all about. A tournament director with 47 years of tennis experience, overseeing an $18 million prize money event, is publicly declaring that the next generation, led in women's tennis by a Filipino player, most WTA schedulers were treating as a supporting act weeks earlier, is the engine driving the sport's growth. That's not a compliment to frame and forget. That's a public calling out of every scheduling decision that buried Eala on Court 5 at odd hours, while her fans were desperately trying to fill seats elsewhere on the grounds. When Haas effectively erupts in professional terms, measured, credible, and pointed, the target of that frustration becomes obvious, and the scheduling record leaves no ambiguity about what triggered it. And the WTA's own scheduling record provides all the evidence needed to understand why. To understand the full picture, you have to go back to the Dubai Tennis Championships in February 2026, the tournament where the institutional contradiction around Eala's treatment became impossible to ignore. In her first two matches at the Dubai Championships, Eala closed out center court. The night session anchor spot, the most coveted scheduling position in tennis outside of Grand Slam finals, was given to her, and she delivered. Ticket sales for her matches tracked directly with her scheduling prominence. When she closed sessions, the commercial performance of the entire evening followed suit. Center court was at capacity. The broadcast numbers held strong across Southeast Asia. The commercially obvious conclusion wasn't subtle. Higher scheduling prominence for Eala meant stronger revenue performance across the entire session, not just her match. Then came the quarterfinals. Against all demonstrable logic, tournament organizers moved her to open the night session instead of closing it, placing the Elina Svitolina versus Antonia Ruzic match after Eala's quarterfinal against Coco Gauff. The attendance consequences for Svitolina's match were entirely predictable to anyone tracking how Eala's fanbase operates. Filipino fans, already watching at 11 p.m. Manila, time for the opening match, were never going to stay in their seats, physically or virtually, for a second match that wouldn't begin until after 1 a.m. back home. Svitolina, a former world number 3 and 4-time WTA 1000 champion, risked playing in front of a drained stadium simply because schedulers failed to sequence two matches in the most commercially sensible order. The reasoning offered for the change, that moving Eala earlier allowed Filipino viewers to catch her match at a more reasonable hour, is logistically defensible in isolation, but it completely ignores the broader strategic reality. When Eala closes a session, every match before hers benefits from a full crowd that arrived early to secure seats. Moving her to the opening slot doesn't just affect what comes after, it dismantles the entire attendance architecture that her presence creates. A documented pattern of scheduling decisions prior to Dubai placed her on secondary courts at events where her fan base attendance clearly justified center court billing. The tour was simultaneously issuing press releases about growing tennis's global footprint while scheduling its most commercially magnetic emerging star in ways that actively undermined that stated ambition. That is the contradiction Tommy Haas's Indian Wells comments put a spotlight on. Strip away the scheduling politics for a moment and look purely at what Eala's presence does to commercial metrics, because the commercial data points in one unmistakable direction. At Indian Wells, the BNP Paribas Open recorded some of its strongest attendance figures for early rounds in recent memory, with Haas directly attributing the weekend crowds to the Eala and Fonseca effect. For context, Indian Wells is historically the most attended tennis event outside the 4 Grand Slams, per the WTA's own records. Sustaining, let alone growing, those numbers in the early rounds, when marquee names are often still finding their footing, is a genuine commercial achievement. Eala delivered that. At Dubai, Filipino supporters drove ticket sales for her matches to levels that affected the entire session's commercial performance. The knock-on effect was visible and measurable. When she was scheduled last, the courts filled early and stayed full. Organizers noticed, broadcast partners noticed, sponsors noticed. The $18 million prize pool at Indian Wells alone signals the financial scale of the environment Eala is now operating in, and her contribution to filling that commercial ecosystem is no longer a footnote. Her 2026 season numbers reinforce the broader picture. Currently ranked 28th in the world, Eala sits 24th in the live WTA race, ahead of Grand Slam champions Madison Keys, Emma Raducanu, and Naomi Osaka in year-to-date points accumulated. She has already banked $291,992 in prize money this season, a figure that excludes her Indian Wells round of 16 earnings. A player producing those numbers, drawing those crowds, and generating that level of broadcast interest in a market exceeding 115 million people deserves scheduling that reflects her actual commercial value. The gap between her market impact and her treatment on the WTA's operational calendar is the most glaring misalignment in women's tennis right now. The Miami Open begins March 17th, and the stakes for Eala couldn't be higher or more precisely defined. 12 months ago in Florida, she walked into the draw as a wild card that many dismissed, then proceeded to eliminate Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Iga Swiatek back-to-back before falling in the semifinals. That run banked her 390 ranking points. Points she now has to defend or face a significant fall from a career-high world number 28 position. Miami's hard courts are faster than Indian Wells, closer to the surface, conditions where Eala's flat, aggressive game thrives best, and the tournament field is loaded with players she has already demonstrated the ability to beat. The scheduling question will follow her to Florida, with her profile now undeniable, validated publicly by a tournament director of Haas's stature. The pressure on Miami's organizers to place her appropriately has never been greater. A mishandled schedule in Florida, buried time slots, outside court assignments, while Filipino fans pack surrounding grounds, becomes exponentially harder to defend after Haas's Indian Wells comments drew a direct line between Eala's presence and record-breaking attendance. The WTA cannot keep benefiting from her commercial magnetism while treating her operational needs as an afterthought. Haas framed it as celebration, but set against the documented scheduling failures of the past 2 months, the implication lands with considerably more force. What began as fan forum frustration has escalated into a conversation at the highest levels of tournament direction, validated by the most public endorsement Eala has received from inside the establishment. Miami will be the next referendum on whether the WTA has been paying attention. That is the full picture. The crowds, the commercial data, the scheduling contradictions, and the pointed message delivered by one of tennis's most respected voices. If this breakdown gave you something the highlight reels didn't, hitting subscribe ensures you get the forensic breakdowns that go beyond what the highlights show. Drop your take in the comments. Do you think the WTA will finally get Eala's scheduling right in Miami? Or is the pattern going to repeat itself? Share this with every tennis fan who deserves the full story, not just the surface version. We'll be back the moment the Miami draw drops. Because if Indian Wells was the warning shot, Miami is where the WTA either corrects course or confirms everything Haas. Just put on the record.